Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a totally fascinating plant that beautifully straddles the line between ancient magic and grounded scientific reality. We are looking at a botanical wonder that our ancestors deeply revered and that modern science genuinely respects. So we're going to take a journey from ancient folklore right down to the literal molecular level.
Right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Discovering the Artemisia plant, the bitter herb of the desert.
So, before we get into the hard science, I want you to just picture an ancient world for a second. Imagine a time where folks would deliberately hang a simple plant in their doorways and inside their homes specifically to fight off evil spirits. Now, looking back with what we know today, it's highly likely that those so-called spirits might have just been really annoying insects and pests trying to avoid a super pungent smell. But to the people living back then, this plant possessed a literal, mystical protective power. And that brilliantly illustrates our subject today, Artemisia. It's also known in Arabic as al-artemas. It's an incredibly resilient perennial herb. If you've ever seen it out in the wild, you'd immediately recognize it by its striking silver-gray leaves. But hey, even if you haven't seen it, you might have smelled or tasted it. It has this incredibly powerful pungent aroma and a distinctly sharp, bitter taste. It is a true survivor. It thrives in dry, semi-desert regions all the way from the Levant in North Africa, right across to Central Asia, and even in parts of Europe.
Now, a crucial point here is that when we talk about Artemisia, we aren't just talking about one single plant. It's actually a broader genus containing several famous varieties that have popped up throughout human history. We've got the Belati variety, the Absinthium, which you might actually know as Wormwood, famous for its intense bitterness, and the Roman variety. They all share that same resilient silver-leafed DNA, but each one brings its own unique profile to the table.
Moving on to Section 2, History's Mystical Guardian Plant, a journey through ancient medicine.
The sheer global reach of this plant is honestly incredible. Millennia ago, the ancient Greeks and Romans were already actively using it to treat digestive disorders. Fast forward a bit, and we see it featured prominently in the foundational Arabic medical texts of legendary scholars like Ibn Sina and Al-Razi. And over in the East, traditional Chinese medicine has utilized it for generations, specifically in moxa, or moxibustion therapy. That's where the dried herb is actually burned near the skin to stimulate healing. From the Mediterranean to the Far East, humanity has relied on this specific herb for thousands and thousands of years.
You see, our ancestors didn't just view this as medicine. They revered it as a literal guardian. Like we mentioned, it was hung in homes, and they even wove it into clothes because they genuinely believed it expelled evil spirits. But, of course, those spirits were largely agricultural pests and disease-carrying insects that were simply repelled by the plant's intense properties.
Which brings us to Section 3, the secret chemical composition, decoding the magic.
So, the true secret magic behind Artemisia's strong aroma and its medical efficacy actually comes down to these active chemical compounds doing all the heavy lifting. First up, we have volatile oils, most notably one called thujone, which packs a massive aromatic and biological punch. Then we have flavonoids, complex molecules called sesquiterpene lactones, which, is a bit of a mouthful, but they actually help drive that sharp, bitter taste and defend the plant in the wild. And finally, a really rich array of antioxidants. When you combine all of these, you get a chemical profile that is exceptionally good at surviving harsh desert environments and highly active when introduced to the human body.
Okay, let's jump to Section 4, Medical Benefits and Uses, a holistic approach to human ailments.
Artemisia acts kind of like a Swiss Army knife for the body. Take the digestive system, for example. It improves appetite, relieves indigestion, expels gas, and, living up to its Wormwood nickname, it actively fights intestinal worms. For the immune system, those volatile oils and antioxidants we just talked about provide antibacterial and antifungal properties, all while supporting resistance to inflammation. And fascinatingly, for the nervous system, when it's used in highly studied, very specific doses, it provides a mild calming effect and actually reduces stress. It is a remarkably versatile botanical tool.
But how do you actually use it? Well, there's a pretty stark contrast between internal and external applications. For internal use, it's typically consumed as an herbal tea or infusion. But note this really carefully. It must be used in strictly small amounts. You absolutely do not want to overdo this. On the flip side, for external uses, the essential oil extracts can act as a great antiseptic for minor wounds, or it can be applied as an ointment to effectively relieve joint pain.
And its utility goes way, way beyond just physical medicine. Because of those powerful volatile oils, Artemisia is a total powerhouse as an aromatic. It's frequently incorporated into rich oriental perfumes, burned as natural dried incense, and added to aromatic bags to naturally repel insects, proving those ancient guardians right once again. However, because of its incredibly sharp scent, it definitely requires careful, calculated blending by experts so it doesn't completely overpower the senses.
Which leads us to a very important section 5, crucial warnings and precautions. The dose makes the poison.
The crucial takeaway here is that this is not just some harmless, gentle leaf that you can consume endlessly. We have to remember that natural doesn't automatically mean safe. Artemisia can actually be highly toxic if consumed in large doses or for long periods of time. It is strictly prohibited for pregnant and nursing women. Also, because of its specific effects on the nervous system, it must be completely avoided by patients with epilepsy. And finally, those highly concentrated essential oils, they must absolutely never ever be ingested internally without direct expert medical supervision. Seriously.